At the family party, my mom looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You need to get out. Rob and his kids don't want you here anymore." The room went silent. I froze, clutching my glass of water like it was the only thing holding me together. People were staring, relatives, family, friends, everyone waiting to see if I'd fight back or crumble. But here's the twist. The house we were standing in? It was mine. My dad had passed away when I was 15, leaving everything to me in his will. I'd spent years learning to live without him, only to watch my mom replace him with Rob and his 2 kids, who made it very clear I wasn't welcome. That night, standing in my own living room, I realized my mom wasn't just choosing them over me, she was willing to erase me completely. When I was 15, my whole world fell apart. My dad, the one person who always made me feel safe, passed away after a sudden illness. Losing him was like having the ground pulled out from under me. I still remember how organized he was, always saving receipts, labeling boxes, keeping every detail in order. At the time, I thought he was just a little too meticulous. But later, I'd realized that his habit of planning ahead would save me. Only a few months after his funeral, my mom started seeing Rob. I get it, she was lonely, maybe even desperate for a fresh start, but to me, it felt like betrayal. I hadn't even had the chance to fully grieve before this man showed up at our front door with a wide smile and a box of his belongings. One day it was just me and Mom figuring out how to survive, and the next, Rob was sprawled on our couch like he'd always been there. At first, I told myself to be patient. Maybe Rob was just awkward. Maybe he'd respect that this was my dad's house, filled with my dad's things. But almost immediately, his presence started to erase my father. My dad's favorite mug? Suddenly gone. His chair in the living room? Moved to the garage. His tools, organized with such care, disappeared into storage bins to make space. Mom would brush off my protests, saying, "Chloe, don't be difficult. Rob needs room too." That was the first time I realized she was building a new family, and I wasn't really part of it. Then came Rob's kids. A son a year older than me and a daughter just 2 years older. They weren't terrible people, I'll admit that. But they looked at me like I was some intruder in what they already considered our house. Mom bent over backwards to make sure they felt welcome. She bought them new furniture, cooked their favorite meals, planned little weekend getaways, and whenever those trips happened, I was conveniently encouraged to stay with my grandparents, to give everyone space. I played along, partly because I didn't want to cause fights, and partly because I still hoped Mom would remember that I was her daughter. But each time I watched them drive off for a family trip without me, something inside me broke a little more. It wasn't just that Rob was taking over, it was that my mom was letting him. Deep down, I knew my dad must have seen something like this coming. He wasn't just cautious with his receipts, he was cautious with his life. And when his lawyer later sat me down to explain his will, I finally understood. My dad had left everything to me, not to my mom. At 15, that knowledge felt overwhelming. But it was also the only piece of him I had left, the proof that he wanted to protect me, even when he no longer could. I'll never forget the day the lawyer called me into his office. I was only 15, still in high school, still trying to figure out how to breathe without my dad around. The office smelled like old books and leather, and I remember sitting there nervously, my legs swinging because they didn't quite touch the ground. The lawyer slid a thick folder across the desk. His voice was calm, almost too calm, as if he were talking about something ordinary and not my entire future. "Chloe, your father left very clear instructions," he said. "All of his assets, including the house, savings, and investments, are to be passed directly to you." At first, I didn't understand. My mom was sitting next to me, and I expected him to mention her name too. But he didn't. Everything, every single thing was mine. I stammered, "Are you sure? I mean, all of it?" The lawyer nodded. "Your father wanted to ensure your security. He was very thorough. This will cannot be contested." I glanced at my mom, and for a moment, her face froze. She forced a smile, squeezed my hand, and said, "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Your dad really loved you." But her eyes told a different story, sharp, calculating, almost resentful. On the way home, the silence in the car was heavy. Finally, she said, "You know, Chloe, this changes things for all of us. Rob and his kids are part of the family now too. It would mean a lot if you shared. I shared? I repeated, my voice small. Yes, she continued, her tone sweet but pressing. Maybe not everything, of course, but perhaps one of the properties, or a portion of the savings. Rob works so hard, and his kids deserve stability. Think of it as a gesture of goodwill. I sat there stunned. My dad had just died, and instead of protecting me, my mom was already plotting how to hand over his legacy to someone else. I muttered, I can't. The lawyer said I can't even touch it until I'm 21. Her smile faltered. For the first time, I saw genuine anger flicker across her face before she quickly masked it. Well, she sighed, I suppose that's how your father wanted it. But don't you think he'd want us all to feel like a family? The conversation haunted me for weeks. She kept circling back, dropping hints, pushing the idea of transferring ownership just for security. Each time I reminded her that it was legally impossible. But even if it had been possible, deep down, I knew I wouldn't have given up a single piece of it. This was my dad's final act of love, his way of making sure I had a future. And yet, the more she pressed, the more I realized something devastating. My mom wasn't on my side anymore. She wasn't the mom who tucked me in at night or held me when I cried. She was someone else now, someone who seemed to believe her happiness with Rob mattered more than me. Life in the house shifted quickly after that meeting with the lawyer. The moment Mom realized she couldn't touch a cent of the inheritance, it was as if a wall went up between us. On the surface, she still called me sweetheart and pretended everything was normal. But underneath, I could feel the change. Rob settled in like he'd always belonged. He rearranged the living room, moved my dad's tools out of the garage, even repainted the walls in colors I hated. Whenever I objected, Mom scolded me. Chloe, you need to stop being so possessive. This is our home now, not just yours. Our home. Those two words stung every time. Because deep down, I knew the truth, it wasn't their home. It was mine. But saying that out loud only made things worse. Rob's kids, Ethan and Madison, quickly became the stars of the household. Mom cooked their favorite meals, bought them new clothes, and planned trips just for the three of them. I'd overhear them laughing in the kitchen while I sat alone upstairs, pretending not to care. Whenever there was a weekend getaway, Mom would pat my shoulder gently and say, "Wouldn't you rather stay with Grandma and Grandpa? It'll be more fun for you." At first, I thought maybe she just needed time to balance things, but it soon became obvious she was choosing them over me, over and over again. One night, I came downstairs and found them all on the couch, watching a movie together. My spot, my dad's old recliner, was taken by Rob, his arms stretched across the back as if he owned the place. Mom had her head on his shoulder, Ethan had the remote, and Madison was curled up under a blanket. It looked like a picture-perfect family portrait. Only, I wasn't in it. "Do you mind if I watch too?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rob glanced at me, then at Mom. She hesitated before saying, "Actually, Chloe, we're watching something that might not interest you. Why don't you go study or call a friend?" I stood there frozen, heat rushing to my face. I wanted to scream, "This is my house!" But instead, I just turned around and climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Lying in bed that night, I stared at the ceiling and felt like a ghost in my own home. My dad had left everything to me, yet I had less of a place there than Rob's children. The house was full of laughter and warmth, but none of it was for me. It was then I began to understand what my father had seen. He must have known my mom would move on, that she might forget about me in her rush to build a new life. That's why he made the will so ironclad. He couldn't protect me from her choices, but he could make sure she could never take away the one thing that was mine, a future. By the time I turned 17, the tension in the house had gone from quiet discomfort to constant friction. Rob wasn't just Mom's new husband anymore, he acted like he was the head of the household. He gave me rules, chores, and lectures, as if I owed him respect just for existing. One night, I came home from school exhausted. I dropped my bag by the door and went straight to the kitchen to grab a snack. Rob was standing there, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "Chloe, You need to start pulling your weight around here, he said. This isn't a hotel where you just come and go. I blinked at him. Excuse me? I clean my room, I do my laundry, what else do you want? His jaw tightened. Respect. Discipline. You need to listen when I tell you something. It's time you learned how to live under rules. I laughed bitterly. Rules? In my house? You don't get to tell me what to do here, Rob. That set him off. His face turned red, and he stepped closer, towering over me. Don't talk back. I've been patient, but you can't keep acting like a spoiled brat. This is our family now, and you're part of it whether you like it or not. Before I could respond, Mom walked in. Instead of defending me, she put her hands on his arm and whispered, Rob, calm down. Then she turned to me, with that weary, disappointed look I'd grown used to. Chloe, why do you always have to fight with him? He's trying to help you grow up. Grow up? I snapped. By erasing Dad? By replacing me with his kids? This is Dad's house, not Rob's, and I won't let him pretend otherwise. The words came out sharper than I intended, but they were the truth. Mom's face hardened. You need to stop living in the past. Rob is here now, and you will respect him. End of discussion. I stormed off to my room, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. My heart pounded in my chest, and my hands shook with anger. For the first time, I realized there was no middle ground. Mom had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. From that night on, Rob and I were locked in a silent war. Every time he tried to assert control, I pushed back harder. He demanded respect. I called him John Conroy, a nonsense nickname I made up just to get under his skin. He set rules. I reminded him that, legally, the deed had my name, not his. Mom begged me to be mature and try harder to get along. But I wasn't going to hand over my father's legacy just to make Rob comfortable. The more they pressed, the more determined I became. What I didn't realize then was that the breaking point was closer than I thought, and when it came, it would shatter everything. The night of the family party is burned into my memory like a scar. Mom had gone all out, balloons tied to chairs, trays of food laid across the dining table, music humming softly in the background. Relatives filled every corner of the house, laughing, sipping drinks, and complimenting how cozy the place felt. To everyone else, it was just a cheerful get-together. But to me, it was a performance. Rob strutted around like the host, shaking hands, pouring wine, introducing people as if he owned the place. His daughter, Madison, fluttered about in a new dress Mom had bought her, soaking up compliments. Ethan bragged about his new job, and Mom beamed with pride. No one even asked me how I was doing. I may as well have been invisible. I tried to blend into the background, sipping soda by the kitchen counter, when Madison's voice rang out. Chloe, don't you think it's time you stop acting like this is your house? I mean, we all live here now. Her words cut through the chatter. Heads turned toward me. I set down my cup slowly. Funny you say that, I replied, my voice calm but trembling underneath. Because legally, it is my house. The room went quiet. Rob's face hardened, and I could see the storm brewing. He stepped forward, towering over me. You need to stop throwing that in everyone's face, he snapped. We've built a life here, Chloe. You're the outsider now, not us. My chest burned. Outsider. In my own home. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mom's voice rose above mine. Enough, she shouted, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Every guest froze mid-bite, their eyes darting between us. Mom's gaze locked on me, and in that moment, I knew she had chosen her side. Chloe, she said, her voice sharp as glass. I'm tired of this attitude. If you can't respect Rob and his children, then maybe you shouldn't be living here anymore. My heart stopped. Are you saying I should leave? Her eyes didn't waver. Yes, you need to go. Tonight. The room erupted in murmurs. My aunts whispered behind their hands, cousins shifted uncomfortably. Rob folded his arms, satisfied, while Madison smirked faintly behind her glass. I felt the sting of tears, but I refused to let them see me cry. I forced out a laugh, hollow and sharp. You're really kicking me out of my own house? That's rich. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. This is our home now, Chloe. You're the one making it miserable for everyone else. It'll be better if you leave. The words echoed in my ears, louder than the music, louder than the whispers. My mom, the woman who was supposed to protect me, had just disowned me in front of the entire family. I turned, grabbed my bag from the hallway, and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one defended me. As I stepped outside into the cold night air, the sound of laughter picked up again behind me, muffled by the closing door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Grandma. Somehow, she already knew. "Come stay with us, sweetheart." Her voice cracked through the line when I answered. "Don't you worry. You'll always have a home here." And just like that, I realized I wasn't walking away empty-handed. I was walking toward the only people who had ever truly stood by me. But even as Grandpa pulled up to the curb and I slid into his car, I couldn't shake the image of my mother's face, calm, certain, and utterly unshaken by the fact that she had just cast out her own daughter. That night wasn't just a party. It was the funeral of whatever relationship we had left. Moving into my grandparents' house felt like stepping into another world. The moment Grandpa opened the front door, he wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "You'll always be safe here, Chloe. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Grandma was right behind him, bustling me inside, fussing over whether I'd eaten, whether I needed extra blankets, whether I was warm enough. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt wanted. Their house wasn't big or fancy. The furniture was a little worn, the wallpaper faded, the floors creaked when you walked across them. But every corner of it held love. The kitchen always smelled like fresh bread. The living room echoed with laughter from old stories Grandpa loved to retell. And my room, small, with a slanted ceiling, became my sanctuary. I decorated it with photos of Dad, books stacked high, and sticky notes of goals I wanted to achieve. At first, I carried the anger from the family party like a heavy weight. I'd replay Mom's words in my head over and over. "It'll be better if you leave." Some nights, I cried myself to sleep, clutching Dad's old sweater. Other nights, I sat awake, promising myself I'd never let anyone take his legacy away from me. Grandma noticed. One evening, as I sat hunched over my homework at the kitchen table, she placed a cup of tea beside me. "Sweetheart, don't waste your energy being bitter," she said softly. "Your father gave you a gift, the chance to build your own life. Use it." Her words stuck. Slowly, I poured myself into school. I joined clubs, studied late, pushed harder than I ever thought I could. While Mom was off playing house with Rob and his kids, I was stacking up achievements, grades, scholarships, friendships that felt real. And my grandparents celebrated every little win. When I aced a test, Grandma baked a pie. When I got accepted into college, Grandpa cried quietly in the corner, muttering something about how proud Dad would have been. For the first time, I felt like I was moving towards something, not just surviving. Still, the thought of the house lingered in the back of my mind. Dad's house, my house. Every time I visited Grandma's lawyer friend for advice or read over the documents Dad had left, I was reminded that house wasn't gone. It was waiting. It was proof that, no matter how far Mom had strayed, Dad hadn't forgotten me. By the time I started college, I had grown tougher. I wasn't the scared, lonely 15-year-old anymore. I was Chloe, the girl who had been kicked out of her own home and survived. The girl who had a future mapped out by the one person who truly believed in her. I still saw Mom occasionally. She'd visit with a fake smile plastered on, saying things like, "You know I love you, right?" I was only doing what's best. I'd nod, but inside I felt nothing. She wasn't my anchor anymore. Grandma and Grandpa were. My friends were. My own strength was. And as graduation drew closer, I knew it was time. Time to face the house. Time to claim what was mine. Dad hadn't left me his legacy so I could hide. He left it so I could stand. Walking across the stage at graduation felt like crossing into a new life. I had a degree in my hand, my grandparents cheering in the audience, and a future wide open ahead of me. But beneath the joy was a quiet certainty. It was time to reclaim what was mine. Dad hadn't worked his whole life just so Rob could play king in his living room. That summer, I pulled out the thick folder from the lawyer deeds, bank statements, the will itself. My name was written on every page. Every document confirmed what I already knew. The house was legally mine, and I had every right to decide what happened to it. One evening, I drove to the house. The front lawn was overgrown, paint peeling along the porch railings, the garden Dad once tended replaced by weeds. My heart tightened. This wasn't just a house, it was a memory, a promise. And it had been left to rot under their care. I rang the doorbell. No answer. Their car wasn't in the driveway. I waited, then called Mom. Straight to voicemail. Hours later, Grandma casually mentioned they were vacationing in Florida. Of course. They were sipping margaritas on a beach while I was standing on the porch of my home, trying to be civil. That night, I made a decision. If they wouldn't face me, I'd make it impossible for them to ignore me. The next morning, I called a locksmith. By noon, the locks were changed. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine again. I walked through the rooms slowly, fingers grazing the walls, remembering where Dad's tools used to hang, where we'd put up the Christmas tree, where he'd sit in his recliner with a mug of coffee. But those memories clashed with Rob's tacky furniture, Madison's posters, Ethan's sneakers by the door. It felt like an invasion. Later that evening, my phone exploded with calls. First one, then 3, then 10. Angry voicemails from Mom. How could you do this? You've embarrassed me. This is disrespectful, Chloe. When I finally picked up, her voice was shrill with fury. Why did you lock us out of our home? She screamed. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It's not your home. It's mine. I've been trying to talk to you about this for weeks. You ignored me, so I acted. She was crying now, her words tumbling over each other. We have nowhere to go. You can't just do this to your own mother. My throat ached, but I kept my voice calm. I'm not throwing you out tonight. You have 2 weeks to pack up and find somewhere else. After that, renovations start. That's fair. There was a long silence, broken only by her ragged breathing. Finally, she whispered, cold and sharp. I never thought my own daughter would turn on me like this. Her words hit like a knife, but I stood firm. You turned on me years ago, Mom. This is me protecting what Dad left me. The next morning, I drove back to the house to check on things. They were waiting for me in the driveway. Mom, red-eyed from crying, and Rob, arms folded across his chest like a bouncer. Rob stepped forward, voice low and threatening. You think you can just boss us around because your name's on some piece of paper? You've got no right to kick us out. I squared my shoulders. That piece of paper is a deed. My deed. This isn't your house, Rob. It never was. And I'm done letting you pretend otherwise. Mom burst into tears, clutching his arm. Chloe, please. We'll be on the streets. Madison is pregnant. You can't do this to her. The words caught me off guard. Pregnant? I looked at Madison standing on the porch, her hands over her stomach, eyes red from crying. For a moment, my resolve wavered. But then I remembered nights spent alone, trips I wasn't invited to, the moment Mom told me to get out at the party. My jaw tightened. I'm sorry she's going through that, I said quietly. But it doesn't change the fact that this is my house. You still have 2 weeks. Rob's face twisted with rage, but he had nothing left to say. Legally, he had no ground to stand on. As I turned to leave, Mom's sobs echoed behind me. I can't believe you'd do this to me. To us. I kept walking, my keys jangling in my hand, my heart pounding with equal parts guilt and relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being pushed out. This time, I was taking back control. 2 weeks passed faster than I expected. Every day, I told myself they'd come to their senses, that by the deadline, boxes would be packed, the driveway cleared, the house quiet. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. When I pulled into the driveway on the 14th day, my stomach twisted. Sure enough, they were waiting: Mom, Rob, Madison, Ethan, and even a couple of relatives who had no business being there. It looked less like a family gathering and more like a standoff. The moment I stepped out of my car, Mom rushed forward, tears streaking her face. Chloe, please, don't do this. You're my daughter. I don't know where we'll go if you force us out. Her words might have broken me once, but not now. I held my ground. Mom, I gave you 2 weeks. That was fair. This is my house. Dad left it to me for a reason. I can't let you take that away. Rob shoved forward, his voice rising. This is our home. You can't just evict your own family. I met his glare, steady. Family? You've done nothing but treat me like an outsider. You never respected me, never respected this house. You want to talk about family? Family doesn't erase each other. One of Mom's cousins piped up, arms crossed. Chloe, this is cruel. Your mother raised you, and this is how you repay her? I turned toward her, my voice sharp. If she raised me, it was only to throw me out when I didn't fit into her new picture. She chose Rob and his kids over me years ago. Don't you dare lecture me about loyalty. The cousin muttered something under her breath and stepped back. Then Madison appeared on the porch, hand on her stomach, tears glistening. Please, Chloe. I'm pregnant. We need a roof over our heads. Don't do this to us. For a moment, my chest tightened. I saw the fear in her eyes, the desperation. But then I remembered how many nights I had slept at my grandparents' while they all played happy family. How my mom had told me to leave at the family party without a shred of hesitation. I'm sorry, Madison, I said softly. But it isn't my responsibility to fix what Mom and Rob should have planned for. My father left me this house to build a future, not to be manipulated. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom broke it with a sob. I'll never forgive you for this. You're heartless, just like your father. The words stung, but instead of crumbling, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I thought of Grandpa telling me, don't waste your energy being bitter. Use what your dad gave you. I thought of Grandma baking pies whenever I achieved something, of the way they reminded me daily that I was loved. I straightened my shoulders. Maybe one day you'll understand why I had to do this. But today, I'm taking back what's mine. 2 weeks are up. You need to leave. Rob swore under his breath. Mom shook her head in disbelief, and Madison sobbed quietly. I didn't wait for more excuses. I turned, walked back to my car, and drove away. As the house shrank in my rearview mirror, my chest felt heavy, but also strangely light. I wasn't the scared teenager being shoved aside anymore. I was Chloe, the woman who stood her ground, who honored her father's love by refusing to let it be squandered. Later that evening, I sat at my grandparents' kitchen table, papers spread out for renovation plans. The house would soon become something new, something I could build my life on. For the first time in years, I felt free. Dad's voice echoed in my heart, not in words but in the certainty that I had finally lived up to the faith he had in me. And as I closed the folder and smiled at Grandma and Grandpa across the table, I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't lost a home. I had reclaimed it,